and roll, everybody. That was a lot of fun, I must admit. I quite like that one. Welcome back to Induction Noise, brought to you by Master Panel Beaters, official Carbs and Coffee podcast, of course. I am Mr. Q. You are joined by myself, Andre, Neil, and Nico. And today we are carrying on with our theme of overrated and underrated cars, having a look at some of the cars that might be overrated and underrated by the crowd in Bloemfontein, which is, of course, where Nico is from. So let's go over to Nico and talk about some of the cars that you've got on your list. First of all, your underrated cars, the ones that you think are better than people say they are. You have the Fiat Abarth Spider.
Yeah, so the Fiat Abarth 124 Spider is, I would argue, the best MX-5 ever made.
But it is just an MX-5.
But it's an MX-5 that actually sounds nice, looks the part, and you could spec it with a black bonnet. Who doesn't like a black bonnet?
And comes with a different motor, right?
Yeah, so it comes with a 1.4 turbocharged motor. So it's also very fuel efficient if that's your only car. It's an efficient car to drive. It's not that expensive to maintain. It sounds the part with the record Monza exhaust. They came with a limited slip diff, which I don't believe the newer MX-5s came standard.
It was an option.
Yeah, but it was an option. Where with the Abarth, I don't believe it was an option. It came standard with the Abarth. And it's not got a massive amount of power, but it's like the 86, right? It's a fun car that looks a bit silly, that sounds bigger than it is. It's like a little bull terrier that's barking at your gate. Look, it's not a Bruce.
I genuinely wanted to fight you on this one because I think it's overpriced if you compare to what an MX-5 costs.
But the new MX-5 is about the same price.
The new MX-5 is now about the same price. The price difference has disappeared. And also, in the later years, I don't even know if you can still get it, but you can't buy an MX-5 with a manual gearbox anymore.
Yeah, and they only bring out, I think, the like if you buy something off the dealer, the new one, it's only the RF, like the sort of
the coupe one,
with an auto box. And I mean, I've never driven either of them, but I think with the turbo mode, it's more daily drivable because of the torque that
it's a lot more daily drivable.
At the end of the day, if you're buying an MX-5 with an automatic gearbox, you're missing the point of that car entirely. Exactly. And I genuinely don't know why Mazda South Africa have done that. It is the most idiotic marketing decision I have ever seen in my life.
It's not even a good gearbox.
It's not a good gearbox. It's a sort of average slush box. And, you know, I had an NC MX-5, and I get the point of what that car is supposed to be and what makes it great and what makes it fun. And a manual gearbox makes sense. You need the manual in there because that's half the fun of driving it. You don't want an automatic MX-5. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, not at all.
And I will also grant you that even though they're basically the same car underneath, the Fiat does look better than the MX-5.
Yeah.
I think. The new MX-5 is not a bad looking car. I think it's quite a cutesy looking thing. It kind of goes with the brand image of what the MX-5 has always been. But yeah, the Fiat just looks that little bit better. The back end especially kind of looks a bit like a miniature Maserati, which is quite cool.
And everything, you know, it's just the overall package. As an overall package,
as an overall package, I think it's probably got more appeal than the MX-5.
And I think secondhand you can buy them for a pretty good price now. I remember there was one on auction. I think it went for 260 in Cape Town with not a lot of kilos on it, and I thought to myself that for a daily driver and a fun car that you can take to the track, take on a mountain pass is awesome.
I would have to drive one to make my final judgment on it, but I'm still not a fan of turbo engines in small, lightweight cars. I think the character of the car kind of warrants having the faster response of having natural aspiration on it. I get that Fiat wanted to use their own engine, and the best engine for the job at the time was the turbo. and I know that kind of differentiates between it and the Mazda, but in that instance, I would Mazda swap the Fiat, quite frankly, because I think having a 2-liter naturally aspirated engine in that car makes more sense than the turbo.
But then you'll lose that awesome engine note. Because, I mean, that air valve sounds nice.
You can put a big exhaust on.
Is it the same engine that was like in the 500s as well?
Yes,
like
it's the same
the
engine.
1400 turbo motor.
Yeah, it's the same engine. So,
And
I mean,
you can get big numbers out of that little motor.
You get big numbers out of that.
But
so
to be fair, you can get big numbers out of the 2-liter lump in the MX-5 as well.
Yeah, but you have to do a lot more. You have to go and turbocharge it, or you have to go do some type of forced induction.
Swap it, basically.
Yeah, or V8 swap it. I mean, who's counting the cylinders?
Just stick a V8 and things. And everything's better with V8s.
Well, I mean, your canoe that's standing behind us.
It's not a canoe.
It's technically a canoe. It's an awesome canoe, I grant you that. But that has a V8, and that's going to be scary.
It's not going to be scary. It's going to be fun.
Okay, well, fun.
Yeah. So if you have a Fiat Abarth or an MX-5 or, as in my case, a canoe, thanks for that, Nico. Actually, whatever car you've got, whatever you drive, you might end up at some stage, unfortunately, in the situation where you've got some kind of bump or bruise or dent or scratch or stone chip or something on the car that just catches your eye the wrong way. And you want to put your car back to the way that it was the day you fell in love with it. Now, the people to speak to in that case is going to be our season sponsor for this series of Induction Noise. Master Panel Beaters in Montague Gardens are a major structural repairs center, and they are approved by massive, big brands of car manufacturers. Car manufacturers with very high standards, by the way. So you can rest assured that their work and their quality is going to be top-notch. They will repair your car to OEM specification, which means it doesn't just look good, but it will still drive, perform, and function the way that it did before any damage was done to it. So if you have anything that needs doing to your car, whether it be paintwork, dents, scratches, any of those things, no job is too big or too small. Chat to Stephen and his team over at Master Panel Beaters. Stephen, thank you guys very much for sponsoring our series. Without you guys, we obviously wouldn't have a podcast, and you guys wouldn't have anything to listen to, because obviously there are no other podcasts on the internet anywhere. Yeah. Let's just leave that there and get back to Nico's list, shall we? Next car on your list is a Jag, which, I'm going to stand fully behind you on this one because I'm a big Jag fan. And you've gone for the Jag XE as being underrated.
So I don't know if any of you have ever driven an XE or seen an XE or been around the XE a lot, but I've
sat in one. I haven't driven one.
It's almost like a forgotten sedan for me. It's like the XF came. Everyone knew about the XF. No one really paid attention to the XE.
Probably similar to the Giulia, probably, right?
It's a lot
but
similar
even
to
worse,
the Giulia.
even worse.
Yeah. The thing that kind of puts me off the XE is the fact that I don't think you can still get it with a V6 anymore, can you?
You can.
Can you still get the V6?
So that's
supercharged as well.
Yes, it's a V6. It's the same motor as the F-Type.
I heard that they're going to take out the V6s and all of them are going to be 4-bangers.
No.
Okay.
So that's
good.
the thing. The XE has a very nice 4-banger normal 3 Series competitor, which feels a lot more premium inside than a 3 Series or a 4.
The interiors are great.
It looks a lot more unique on the outside. It looks a bit more sophisticated, etc. And then you get the XES, which basically, if I'm not mistaken, has the V6 supercharged from the F-Type.
Yeah.
So it has the silly noises that the F-Type has, etc. And it's just a hoot to drive. It's not Giulia QV or M3 or whatever like that. It's only got about 260 or 250 kilowatt. No, 270, sorry. It's got 270 kilowatts. But it's still such a fun car to drive. And we drove them at Pakisa for the Jaguars also got the Jag experience. And it just puts a smile on your face.
Wait, what year was that?
That was 2017. 2017, I believe. 2017 or 2018.
That car is kind of like forgotten, eh?
It's completely forgotten.
I also had that experience.
But that also makes it a very good second-hand buy because they're cheap as chips now.
The XES, there's one for sale currently in that nice blue that the Jags come with. So it's a 270 kilowatt one. I think it's got 40k kilos on the clock, and they looking for 450 or 430k for it, which is
a lot of car for the money.
It's a bargain.
So I also went to I think it was about 2015, 2016-ish. There was this Jag experience. I was in Sandton for a week in Joburg. I don't go there often, but then I went there. And they had this on the Sandton, the shopping mall. They had that on the roof. They had that experience.
It's because it's the only place in Joburg that doesn't have potholes.
That's on the money. So they had this donut thing where you can get in a car and
that ice thing's slippy as hell. Dude.
Yeah.
But I've been on the skid pan at Killarney. It's the same story. It's so
but the
slippery.
coolest bit of that was there was this maroon, like burgundy kind of color, XES. So the XES is kind of the BMW 340.
Yeah, it's about the 340
It's not quite
competitor.
M3, it's under it's about M340.
Yeah, and C43.
But it sounded great. So there was a guy that took you for laps. So it had this course that went through the parking garage at the top and then on the roof somewhere and like with cones and stuff. And I was quite impressed. I was like,
it's awesome. And since we were at the track, we had so many different stuff that we did with them. Like, for instance, we had a track that was laid out with it's almost like oversized cones with lights. So then you get a green light and a red light, but it's always randomized. So you have to look in your peripheral vision. Where's the green? Because that's your next one. And then after you've gone through the green, you need to go to the one that was red and it's going to turn green once you've gone through the green. The red turns green, and then
sounds complicated.
It's complicated, but
sounds like something they do in a computer game.
but it actually showed that even though it's still a heavy-ish car. I mean we talk a lot about the heavy car, but it still felt very nimble. So since it doesn't have the four-wheel drive BS that most of that generation cars has,
but I must say,
that class of cars has.
Jaguar's always been very good at making big, heavy cars feel very nimble.
Yes.
I mean, I had that 99 XJR, which is a big limousine of a thing.
Yeah.
And that car, genuinely, in terms of handling, felt very much like an E46. It shrinks around you and it becomes a very small, nimble, chuckable, fun thing to drive.
Yeah. And it's predictable.
I never thought we'd say XJR is nimble and chuckable, but here we are.
Well, we were talking about Camrys for long, so
I think we've come a long way from the Camrys. This is definitely heading in the right direction. At least there's a obvious evolution happening here, and
for the two viewers
less reliable but more exciting.
Yeah,
which is often the same thing.
And at the same time, the whole Jaguar being unreliable thing is complete rubbish because I've never had any problems with any of my Jags. Those of you that know me know I sell cars for a living, and we've sold lots of Jags through the dealership. We've never had comebacks on them. We've never had any problems. We had one car that had a minor niggle with a hydraulic leak on a roof. That was it. And the only reason that car had a hydraulic leak on the roof was because it had not done any mileage in 20 years, and it just got a little bit brittle and sprung a leak. And it wasn't a big thing to fix. So, to say that Jags are unreliable is really kind of unfair. I think they're very, very well-made cars these days.
Any car has its little shit. I mean, any car breaks.
Except the Toyota.
Except the Toyota. That seems to fix itself the longer you drive it.
But
It just comes right after a while.
A lot of people would say, oh, this car's such low mileage, but it's always in the shops. It's because you don't drive it, you idiot.
Yeah, exactly. A car breaks more if you don't drive it.
Yeah. But anyways, so it's an awesome car.
Last car on your list, the Volvo S60 Polestar. Something I've not driven before.
So we're on underrated still.
Yes.
Yeah, this is underrated.
Yes. Very underrated. So it's a lot the same type of car as the XE, right? And in the noughties and the 2000s, like from 2010, etc., let's be honest, Volvo made boring cars. There hasn't been a proper Volvo between the noughties and about 2012-ish. They've all been boring. Nothing a petrol head would really want, except for a C30, maybe. The C30 T5, etc., which was the hot hatch.
Well, technically speaking, it wasn't a Volvo.
It's only Twilight that made the C30 basically famous for certain. And I feel sad that I know that. Basically.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how do you know that?
That's what I'm saying.
So which one is your favorite?
Team Jacob.
Oh, God. But then they came
Let's get back to Camrys.
Then they came out with the S60 Polestar, which had Öhlins suspension, Brembo brakes, and the first one had a 3-liter V6 that also sounded the part. Later,
was it a V6 or straight six?
I don't know, actually.
V6s.
I think it was a V6, but I could be wrong.
Because I know Volvo had that
It could be a
turbocharged straight six that they used in a couple of cars.
S80 had it, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Then it's probably the straight six, but it produced about 200.
But it was also quite funny because it was a transverse mount straight six.
Took up a lot of space.
And it's the straight six produced 258 kilowatts, but then later they brought out the S60 Polestar in a bit of a special edition as well with the twin charge 2-liter, which was just as fun and made it a bit lighter as well. And I mean, this is a Volvo that did 0 to 100 under 5 seconds. Still sounded pretty nice, and the interior quality of it. 4-wheel drive, yes. So it's got 4-wheel drive. You can see it as a heavy car, but it's a safe car. So I mean, the 4-wheel drive,
it's still a Volvo.
It's still a Volvo. It's at the end of the day, it's still a Volvo. But to me, it's impressive that it can still be chucked around corners because of the type of quality suspension that Polestar put on it. It's got
Öhlins
proper
is quite
weight.
extreme on a road
Yeah,
car.
it's extreme.
Yeah.
It's extreme. And then with I think it's got 6-part brakes, Brembo brakes in front, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
so I mean,
hectic.
it's massive brakes. And the interior of a Volvo, and I will continue saying this because my V40 is the same. The interior of that compared to, once again, a 3 Series is just better fact. If you compare it to a new Golf or whatever, it's just so much better. I mean,
Volvo interiors are amazing.
it's
It must be
awesome.
said.
There's
I like their
no
interior.
hard plastic.
It's all very, very good quality materials. It's all very
Exactly.
nicely put together.
Just a warning.
And I must say as well, Andre, you might appreciate this because you're old and broken. Volvo makes some of the most comfortable seats.
100%. And it's still very
I can
supportive.
leave my little cone at home.
You can leave your... Is it a cone or a donut? Is
cushion.
I was
I hope it's not
not a
cone shaped,
donut.
basically.
I was going to say, if it's a cone, that might
just
be
a-
some kind of fetish thing going on
Just
here.
a cushion, okay? It's just a cushion.
He
Yes,
drives
you
around
can
sitting on a
leave
butt
it at
plug.
You can basically leave it at home then, and you can heat your butt up if you want, if it gets a bit rough.
That's always useful.
It's always useful. I mean, so no, it's honestly such an awesome sedan. It's really
the only
awesome
thing
sedan.
that would worry me about a car like that is Volvos notoriously built like tanks. They last forever. They go a million miles, and you never have any problems with them. But if you go and search around on the internet, you will find many a horror story about people with 2-liter twin-charged Volvos not lasting very long.
Well, then just go for the 3-liter.
And with the Polestar, it's stretched even
It
further.
is squeezed. The last bit is squeezed out of
So
it.
how much longevity is there in that engine? I mean, you're squeezing a hell of a lot
What
of power.
kind of power do you pull out of a 2-liter there? What's
270 kilowatts.
out of a 2-liter?
Yes.
Yo, that's
But I mean, the
That's
XC90,
harsh.
the XC90 T6 has that same motor.
Yeah.
same worry for me.
Yeah, but I mean,
Same.
it's a damn tank. It's a 3-ton tank. My mother's put probably the first one she put about, I think it was 70k kilos on the clock. And I know it's not high
That's not even
mileage.
running, bro.
Yes, but I mean, you get Mahindras.
That's when a Toyota goes in for its first oil service.
You get a Mahindra that's motors falling apart at like 5k kilos.
Yeah, but that's a
That
Mahindra.
doesn't count, bro.
Or, okay, the
Mahindra.
previous shape Rangers gearboxes,
Yeah,
they were like plastic.
made of cheese.
Exactly.
Actually, to be fair, there's a whole different discussion to be had about the previous Ranger and its gearboxes. The problem with those were that guys were told these cars have got so much torque and they're so good for towing and whatever, and they would hitch their 4.5-ton yacht behind the thing
put it in
and
top
then
gear
try
and
and
go.
tow it up Sir Lowry's Pass in 6th and expect the gearbox to last.
Oh, no, first they would stop off at Fricky with his laptop and get a tune.
Fricky would put the tune on it.
Put a map on there, pops and bangs, extra 50 horsepower, extra
And rolling
200 Newton meters.
coal, bro.
Yes, take that.
And that's good for the gearbox. That's
you
always
have to
good for
put
the gearbox.
a Raptor basically.
Yeah, and a Raptor kit.
The fake dirt,
you know.
the fake dirt on the.
I think like the takeaway from Nico's list is like there's actually if you're looking for something, if you have to kind of like buy the executive saloon, right? There's a lot of left field choices, and
There's
you also
so
touch
many.
like I mean
The Julia's in the same kind of
XE60,
even the
XE. There's so many.
so my dad's got the 159. The Alpha 159, which is basically a
Brilliant
Brero
I
with 4
love
doors.
that car. I
It's
think
a Brero with 4
It's
doors.
such a
It
good-looking
still
car.
looks stunning. His car is 10 years old, but it looks like the best sedan. It just looks like today's sedan.
Especially the color he's got.
And it's always a villain car.
Yeah, it's
Always a villain
it's
car.
an 1800 turbo, and
But it's not as good a villain car as an XJ.
no.
XJ is like so sinister looking, especially if you got a dark
I
colored
mean,
one.
but the XJ. I mean, to be fair, the XJ is a villain car in the full sense of the word. It's kind
It
of looks
was-
like a villain car, and it's driven by villains.
It was
so,
driven by villains.
Yeah. So, but the 159 is another choice there, and the Giulia. So depending on how old you're going, but there's a lot of cars. You don't have to buy the safe choice. You don't have to buy one of the 3 German cars if you want a nice sedan.
So I was told that the 159 was designed for Tommy guns at the back to be able to be pulled through that little scent hole by the armrest.
By the Mafia.
Yes. It was the size of it was designed to be able to pull a Tommy gun through it.
I don't think they still use Tommy guns.
Well, I mean, I don't know. With the Italian mafia, you never know. You don't talk about family.
I think if you see one, you won't be talking about it.
This is also true. So moving on to your overrated list, Nico, you've got here the GTIs.
Yeah.
So we touched on these earlier. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that that the newer GTIs are just they're too grown up.
Yeah, they
like I said earlier, the Golf 5 GTI captured for me the spirit of the original, which was that it's supposed to be practical, but it's supposed to be fun.
But it's groundbreaking. It's new. It's
new and it's exciting.
It moves the game on in a big way.
And the GTIs have kind of lost their way. They did what they did with the Mark IV, essentially. They've just gotten bigger and fatter and older and more grown up, and they're more luxurious, and they're probably better everyday cars for it, but they're not good GTIs anymore.
And let's not forget, they are spitting distance from R1 million to buy now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a million
that's
rand.
stupid.
Look, I mean, everything's
for a GTI.
expensive, but
Everything's
the GTI for a bar,
Yeah.
I mean, the Corolla GR is cheaper than a GTR.
It actually shows makes the Yaris GR actually quite good value, right?
Once
Around
again,
650. If you think about it, I mean, it's still a lot of money.
Or the i30N. I love an i30N.
I and I'll take that every
That's an
time over a
awesome
GTI.
piece of kit.
So here's another question on that same topic. What is the worst GTI that ever was? That's quite an easy one, actually.
2, 3, or 4.
3.
3, you'd say.
By country mile.
I would say 3.
3
Which is
only
basically
came,
a city golf.
It only came with a 2-liter 8-valve that put out a enormous 85 kilowatt. And it was heavier than the 2.
It did burst as the VR6.
It almost weighed as much as the 350Z.
Which was slower than the VR6 was slower than.
Listen here, sir.
It almost weighed as much as the 350Z. I mean, it's a big, heavy thing.
The VR6 was hella overrated.
Oh yeah, the VR6 is terrible.
It sounded great, but that was about it. The VR6 was slower than the 2-liter 16-valve, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, on
The
paper.
VR6 in the was it a DSG that the VR6 came in the R? Okay, that
was the
explains
R32.
it.
That was the R32
So
in the
everyone
Golf
went about
That was the Golf
crazy
5.
And
about the R32.
but the GTI was quicker off the line as well. Although the
that R32 was, you hear this amazing engine, but you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
And then with the shift, it goes. How
does it go?
No. We're not doing this shit again.
But like an old one of those what was the types, the brands? It's like a TDK 90.
Yeah.
That was like starting to stretch
But
out of it.
the R32 was available as a manual in Europe. It's
Yes,
just
you
that
got a
we
manual.
didn't get it.
No, didn't we get a manual?
Did we get the manuals?
Well, here's a question. Didn't it come out in a 4 as well? Didn't you get an R32 in the Golf 4 and
You
the Golf
did,
5?
but not in South Africa.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
And I
was
don't think
actually
it was
quite a-
called.
with the-
Was it
I mean,
called
the
the
closest-
I
R34?
think it was actually called R32.
We had Volkswagen South Africa brought out with the Golf and the Jetta. When they started bringing the 1.8 turbos, they brought out a 132 kilowatt version, and then they brought like the GTI-R and in the Jetta the 1.8 TR, and the GTI-R had similar wheels and the body kit that's very similar to the R32. That's sort of bigger.
But no. So the standard one was 110 kilowatts.
Yes.
The R's were 132 kilowatts.
Correct.
Cars.
Correct. It's like the red T that they have it in the Jetta as well. But
You
some
also
people
got the
want to
V5 Jetta.
Yes.
The
A friend of
2.3
mine,
is a 2.3 V5.
V5. The
It's a
Passat
weirdest
also came
engine.
out.
Very weird
And
engine.
some Golfs as well. But they
We
were
didn't get the
very
Golfs.
little. There was a handful. It's the same with the Golf, because a friend of mine at Varsity, his dad owned a VW dealership, and they in the Golf 5 also, and you remember there was a GT, not the GTI, but the diesel. I mean, you get it.
Yeah, the
GTD,
the diesel GT.
But in the 5, they brought out a GT Golf, but it was a diesel. So it was a souped up 2-liter turbo TDI.
But was it a few that came in? It wasn't on the back of the car magazine. You couldn't go
No,
buy
you couldn't couldn't find it, but
Special
Volkswagen
import.
brought in a few of them
I need
as
to
like
test it out and see if it...
test it out for local conditions
Okay.
or whatever.
No,
He had one like that. And it was-
Volkswagen did a lot of weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they made that, didn't they make that rear engine Golf 6 that was undrivable?
They had like, wait, that was
No,
like,
that's like a
you mean
concept
Jeremy Clarkson drove
the
one.
mid-engine
Yeah, but that's like a
W12.
concept.
that was like a concept car.
I was-
Yeah,
was
but
a
they
one-off
love
with
doing
the
that.
with the W12 engine.
Yeah.
in it,
I do
basically.
kind of like weird GTI things.
But we can have like a complete podcast on weird things that VW have done, and the W engine is probably one of the things that I would put on that list, because it's
That's
just
the Pierre, right? Who kind of like greenlit that around the Phaeton, and that sort
Yeah,
of discussion of building the fastest car to go 300 k's, but certain decibels, something like that. There's a
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
story, very interesting story behind that.
the
actually.
Phaeton was a very, very interesting car, and I kind of like it. I would love to have a W12 Phaeton.
They even had
And
a
at the
W8
same
as
time,
well.
I hate the idea of the
What's the running
W12.
cost? What's the running cost of one of those?
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to dig deep.
In Germany, I mean, a lot of the cars, of course, they had four-wheel drive, and you even had a W8 in the Passat,
Yeah.
which was, I think, similar to probably what that is. Is that not similar to the Bentley motor? The
It's
W8 in that?
similar, and the W engine is an interesting one, because you've got basically two V engines, but each V only has one cylinder head. And it's
weird,
it's a,
dude.
it's from an engineering point of view, it's a very
Sounds like
odd thing,
maintenance.
and it's a nightmare, because the
Sounds
W12 engines that you get in the Bentleys and in the Phaetons, when they first came out, when they were developing that engine, it was a bit of a nightmare to get the cooling in the cylinder heads, because you've got two banks of cylinders on each cylinder head, and it's a lot of heat that gets built up there. So you have to do a lot of cooling, and yeah. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for another day. We could go on pretty much for days if we don't watch ourselves. Sorry, guys. I just want to interrupt proceedings for a quick second, with good reason. I want to thank you, essentially. I honestly think these three guys will agree with me. We've just been completely overwhelmed with the huge amount of support and positive feedback and really cool compliments and comments that are coming our way from the podcast. It seems like you guys are at least enjoying it, which is great, because it means we can keep doing it, because truth be told, we are loving it. We think this is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. This is just it's been so much fun to do this, and we get to share it with you guys. So please, if there's topics that you want us to discuss, get in touch with us. You can reach us on Facebook. You can get us on Instagram. You can email me directly, Mr. Q, MRQ @carbsandcoffee.co.za. We'd love to hear from you guys more. and we'll try and incorporate some of your ideas into the show, because I think obviously this is a two-way street, and the more ideas we get from you guys, the better it becomes for you. Also, I'd like to just mention that we have some advertising slots available. They are dirt cheap because we honestly didn't expect it to do as well as it is. So if you have a business and you want to get in touch and you want to have a little ad spot like this on our podcast, let me know, and we can chat about putting your brand out there. If you want to be a guest on the show, get in touch with us and we can chat about that. We can put you in here, we can chat about your cars, what you think of our cars, and much fun and excitement will ensue, I'm certain. So yeah, thank you guys. Huge thank you. Honestly, I can't thank you enough. This has been just insanely surprising. I can't get over it. It's just really cool that you guys are having as much fun as we are. Thanks, and let's get back to the actual podcast, and I'll stop driveling. Next car on your list.
Something we'll all agree on, I think, which is the Mustang. It's the car that I would love to love as a kid. Because as a kid, you get giddy when you hear a massive V8 rumbling down.
So which Mustang though?
So the 2015 onwards
The
ones.
new, that new generation.
I've heard the facelift is better, but I haven't driven facelift, so I can't. But before the facelift, newer generation, I would really like to like it because they're becoming quite affordable stuff to buy as a toy secondhand. But it's just horrible. It's got this big engine. But it can't put the power down. I mean, it's like a Lumina, right? It's got the noise, it's got everything, but it can't put the power down, even if you do the supercharger kit from RGM. So
you're just making the problem worse.
You're just making the problem worse. So Renier, that you used to watch his YouTube channels, right? He did the supercharger kit on his Mustang because he was getting tired of being beaten robot to robot by a stock Mark 7 GTR.
And then it got worse.
Yeah.
Because it just
exactly. What happened is he had to go do a MEF kit because after one run, it was getting heat soaked.
Yeah.
Then it was basically NA again. And after that, you need to do stuff to the suspension because that's the reason we're all saying, keep the Mustang away from a crowd, because something just doesn't work.
The Mustang suffers from a sort of ailment that affects a lot of American cars, I think, because what the Americans did was they designed a platform in the 1960s. And then every year they put a new body on it. And they used the same platform through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. And they just kept building the same car underneath with new platforms.
Yeah.
And they tweaked the engines and they upgraded them. They gave them a bit more power.
Same recipe, same kind of...
But it's still just a ladder chassis with a diff from the 1960s.
Yeah.
And... you know, I have to agree with you. I think the modern Mustang is overrated, but at the same time, I kind of like it.
But that's the thing, you see.
But it's a muscle car, though. It's not supposed to
my
be
dad,
elegant in putting the power.
My dad had a 1964 Mustang, which I absolutely loved because it had the noise. It was a convertible. We take it out on Sundays and you cruise around in it. But it's not a sports car.
No.
The new Mustang tries to be a sports car. And to a certain extent, it's a hell of a lot better than the older Mustangs because you have something now called independent rear suspension.
Oh yes,
which has reached the US.
Advanced.
It's new technology, people. We have heard about this. It came from a place called Europe. And America has now heard of Europe and that there are these things called corners that people drive around. So I get that the new Mustang is a much better car than it used to be, but for me, the Mustang is a car that's supposed to give you cheap performance.
Yes.
And if you go and look at international pricing on Mustangs, in America,
Then,
the Mustang is a cheap car.
I mean, most kids'
And when you
first
get
car
in
is
a Mustang, it looks and feels like a cheap car.
Yes.
So when you come to South Africa and a Mustang costs more than $1 million,
It competes with sports cars.
Yeah.
it's competing with 911s, and it can't.
No.
I mean, it's a joke.
Well, used 911s.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not. It's not a value option like it's supposed to be.
So what we're saying, folks, that consumer advice is the Mustang's not a bad car. It's the price that's wrong.
Yeah, it's just way
it's
too
the price
expensive
that's
for what
wrong.
it
If
is.
it was half the
And
price,
it's
it would have been a
South
cool thing.
Yeah, and it's South Africa that's wrong. And I think why it's so popular as well is the aftermarket sport.
Yeah.
And they're,
That's-
and they're fairly
Sport
decent
is
for us,
pretty
like, you know, the newer Mustangs. I mean, a lot of them are actually quite good handling cars, right? If you
Yeah.
look at the 350, the GT350s that came out, they're good. They're good.
Yeah, those are serious
Seriously
cars, but
good cars,
they're
but
not cheap anymore.
They
They're
had
I know.
a very big problem though. That GT350,
yeah.
the harmonics in the motor made the oil filter back out.
Yeah,
So
it unscrews itself.
It unscrews itself,
Yeah, I heard
and the
about that.
oil filter is above the heads, so it sets itself alight.
Oh, wow.
Well, but that's a Ford thing. I mean, like every second model, you get that, right? I mean, if you don't want to end up in a ball of flames, you're not going to buy a Ford, are you?
There's always keep the doors unlocked.
You're going to buy an Alpha. Sorry, what?
I mean, I've never driven a new one. I had a friend who had, or I have a friend who had a 1969 Mustang, and we used to enjoy cruising around Somerset West with it.
But that's different.
But I can't get over the looks of the new one.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I think the latest one that just came out now, that the new
that looks
GT3
good.
race car is
That
based
looks
on,
good.
that actually
Yeah.
looks quite cool. But the one that we had here in South Africa, especially in like the yellow and the reds that it came out, I just can't.
It's a bit
It's
vanilla.
trying to be something
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the.
And it became
tried
a
to be-
Corolla.
It tried to be retro cool, and it just isn't.
What's less cool than that generation Mustang?
The electric Mustang.
No, the one with the EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbo engine.
God.
No, we can't even talk about that because
That's not a Mustang. That's a lady part or something. I don't know.
Why would you buy a Mustang with a four-banger? I mean,
Do you think they brought it out just for emissions purposes? So what was the reasoning behind
I
bringing out
honestly,
the
honestly think they thought this is a brilliant car.
I
I think
it's
some people bought it because they wanted a Mustang,
Look, it's
and it's
also
now.
part of the Mustang legacy, right? I mean, that V6 Mustangs has always been around, right? So instead of
But that's
bringing out
okay.
another feature,
straight sixes.
instead of or a straight six, instead of
Yeah,
bringing out the
V6s are-
6-cylinder one, they just brought out the 3.2
You
turbo.
had V6s as well, but I mean the V6 is fine. It's just a slightly small. It's the same kind of thing. It's just like toned down a bit.
no,
But a four-banger,
a Mustang should be a V8.
Call it a pony. They must don't put the Mustang badge on it.
like
Call
the
it a
Mach-E
pony.
Mustang, right? The electric
Oh,
one.
No, just don't
that's
build
even
it.
worse.
Don't change the badge. Just don't build it.
Exactly.
I mean,
just
it-
delete it from.
just
cancel it. Right?
Forget
Yeah.
that you thought
Popular,
about
cancel
it.
it.
You know, just go and wash your mouth out with soap that you mentioned 4-cylinder Mustang and forget that you ever had that bad idea, because it's just, why would you do that to yourself?
Nah, it's stupid.
It's like,
But you
no.
know, it's almost like if that car was built by someone else. You know, if Toyota came out and they built a 4-cylinder 2.3 turbo car that was rear-wheel drive, blah blah blah, that actually would have been fine. You know, if that type of engine
Yes.
was in an 86, right?
Yeah,
4-cylinder turbo, blah,
Yeah.
it would have been
Well-
fine. The problem is you're calling this a Mustang.
yeah.
And a
And then
Mustang
you
is
end
a
up with this
V8.
crap. It's like this new Lotus SUV, electric SUV Lotus.
No.
What about, is there anything in that sentence that should be paired
Lotus
together?
SUV, no.
Electric
And in
SUV.
electric as well.
Heavy electric SUV.
I mean, the
Lotus.
problem is that they've all been. I've seen that car in real life, and they've all been influenced by stuff like the Urus,
Yeah.
because that's the sort of styling that they go for some reason. It
The
looks like
Vol
they,
styling.
whole styling. Yeah, I mean that's like this sort of shocking. And the weird thing is, people see it's like also with the BMW XM. Like, I'm sorry now, not to go into a different
Sorry,
topic,
but I haven't had lunch
Oh.
yet. I'm feeling a bit queasy.
I must admit, I'm starting to get the shakes. My blood sugar's tanking here, and you saying Urus just makes me want to hurl.
You're saying XM is just I got these flashbacks of
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
one.
I can't believe what Ashley
Frighteningly quick.
Oldfield.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
frighteningly
can't
quick.
believe what
Frighteningly
Ashley
quick.
Oldfield did with that thing up the hill.
They're
Yeah, that's
very
very, very
quick.
quick.
They're very quick, but oh my goodness, it's ugly.
But unfortunately, what is that? What is the last true that's the first car in how many years that was developed by BMW's M division?
Yeah.
Solely developed by BMW's
The last
M?
one was the
1M.
1M. Before that.
I'm a bit
What a waste of good engineers, right?
Yeah.
They could have made a fantastic sports car, although it still would have looked like crap because they would have styled it. So
Yeah. BMW would have styled it with huge nostrils. But yeah. Anyway, next car on your list is the VW Amarok, or as I like to call it, the Amarok.
So, this
'Cause
car
it
I
is-
had a very bad first experience with, and I had the experience with the V6 Amarok, the
3 litre
top,
V6.
the
monster, I
top of the
suppose.
range V6 Amarok, right? So we went to go and look at this, and at that time we were driving a Ford Everest. We went to go and look at this as a replacement for the Ford Everest, and I remember sitting in the car and looking at the center console and moving the center console side to side and looking at the dashboard and thinking, am I in a Polo or am I in a Amarok that costs 1 million rand again?
Well, they're supposed to have these fancy interiors. I haven't been in one
No, it
recently.
looks exactly like a Polo Viva.
It's actually worse than that. It
so
doesn't
bad.
look like a Polo Vivo. It looks. What do they call that panel van?
Oh,
Caddy.
yeah, the Caddy.
The Caddy.
Yeah.
It looks like a Caddy inside.
Yeah, and look, I'm not talking about the new one that just came out.
Okay.
It's
I'm
the
talking
previous
about the
generation.
previous
First 3
generation.
litre V6.
Yes.
So the Amarok for me has always been an interesting one because I think in a way they hit the nail on the head with the Amarok, and at the same time they completely missed
The target
a
market
trick.
is slightly different
Yes.
to what a Hilux is.
The
supposedly.
Hilux is a utilitarian truck. It's hard. It's hard wearing. It's
Built to
a
last.
working
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah.
The Amarok drives like a car, but it's not a good bucky.
Yeah, for me, I don't care about
Can't work on it.
I don't care
No.
I don't care if it looks like a Caddy.
You put a
I don't.
You put a ton in the back of an Amarok, and it's going to struggle.
No, it's stupid.
So for me, I remember one of these anecdotes that I heard. Now, this is how I remember it a few years ago. You know that Voetspore?
Yeah.
There's this Afrikaans series that most people will know,
Yes.
where you've got this guy that used to be this actor guy. He used to be Vicky's dad in the Viking cartoon that we had. So this guy, he does these shows where he drives his 4x4s up in Africa. And they used to have, I think they started with cruisers or something, and then at some point they were sponsored by Volkswagen. They got Amaroks, and he struggled so much with this
Volkswagen.
thing on the road that they couldn't get up things where they were supposed to get on, and
Yeah.
the stuff broke. So he basically gave it back, and he bought Land Cruisers again.
VW
So-
was pushing so hard to sponsor everyone. I mean, they even sponsored Umsadel.
Yeah.
Yes, but he still does the Amarok thing, by the way.
No, it's not Amaroks anymore.
Well, it was very recently. It was still Amaroks,
It's-
like literally a few days.
It's now Navaras,
Oh, okay.
which
Navara?
it's a better car.
It is.
It's a better car,
But
and
anyway,
it
so-
only costs you about 600k for a top of the range model.
the thing for me with the Amarok is that, as a bucky, it's not a bucky,
Well, that's the thing.
That's what you're saying.
And
So
that's the Amarok as
if-
well.
if
They were the
It's-
first true luxury sort of,
The South
luxury
but it
African
wasn't
market.
luxury.
Yeah.
the
It's-
South African market, and to a certain extent the US market, lends itself very well to a pickup truck
All the
that
qualities,
drives
basically.
like a car.
Australia as
if
well.
I lived in Europe and it would only be occasionally you'd put something on the back, a surfboard or something,
Yeah.
but you'd pretty much just be driving on roads or put a bicycle in the back, on
I'd rather have a station wagon.
sure. But if
I have a
if
station wagon.
if you wanted
I can say that now because I'm cool like that.
if you wanted like something with an open back where you could put stuff on, then in Europe or wherever, fine.
Then
But
you'd have a station wagon with a trailer.
there we go. But like you said, in South Africa and in America, people actually use the stuff to work with.
Yeah.
This guy owns a farm. He's a farmer. He wants a bucky that he can use,
Yeah.
and he wants the dogs on the back. He wants to put like heavy things on the back, tow the caravan, do all these things.
If you want a load lugging truck / bucky.
You have two options in South Africa.
Amarok is not going to do it.
No.
You buy a Hilux if you want to be safe, and you want to know you can sell it for exactly the same when you sell it like 10 years down the line, maybe more. You get a Toyota, and you know it's going to give you shit. The other option is get an Isuzu. It's going to be painfully slow. It's going to be less cool. It's going to be heavy,
horrible
whatever,
to drive,
but it's going to last forever.
Yeah. You'll wish that it would die.
The Fords I think is
The
a
Ford's
bit of
a bit in between.
It depends, because
I'm
some of them
biased
are
to the
okay.
Ranger, so.
But I love
like
a
the
Ranger.
Ranger.
I love
think-
them. I think
I
they
think
are
the Ranger
cooler.
can do a lot of bucky stuff. I think a Ranger's pretty good off-road. I think a Ranger can lug a load when you need it to. I don't think it's going to be as hardy as a Hilux is.
The reliability on those are a problem. They're just
But-
inconsistent.
The Ranger is a hell of a lot nicer to drive and live
Yes.
with than the Hilux is.
Yeah. The Ranger is a better... If they're new and standing next to each other, I would pick the Ford as a better thing if I didn't know what was waiting for me.
Yeah.
The previous one, a friend of mine had one as a farming bucky, and I drove it on the road, like just before the new one was launched. Now so it had, like, again, we talk about all the features in it. Drove really. I
It's
think
nice.
it was I can't remember if the last ones were single or bi-turbo or the single turbo. The last generation.
So the last
The
generation, they at the end of the life,
you got both.
they
At
the end of the cycle,
yeah.
So-
Then you got the bi-turbo with the new 10-speed.
The Python was like a 160 kilowatt thing or something.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was like the luxury version. It had leather seats,
Yeah.
and it was really nice
That's
to
the
drive.
bi-turbo if it had luxury seats and stuff.
I mean, it was really nice to drive on the road. Super
Yeah.
powerful. It felt like a car. However, he had problems with fuses blowing the whole time.
Yeah.
On the tailgate, he couldn't get the tailgate open for stuff like that.
That's
he
so
bought
weird.
it. He bought it
Yeah,
brand
that's
new,
interesting.
and
But why is a tailgate on a bucky electric?
No, it's the lights of it. The lights,
okay.
or then it didn't want to lock, for instance, and he brought it brand new. And
But that's what bothers me, right? You don't hear. You don't hear. Maybe people aren't telling you about it, but I've never heard of a Hilux with that kind of shit. Like, never.
Well, I've heard stories of Hiluxes with issues, but they're far fewer
They feel.
and further
But I
between.
think also, like, the sort of people, like, the buckies live hard lives, eh? Jeez,
Yeah.
I must say,
Yeah,
also the way
too.
people treat the
But
stuff.
I've
like-
seen
a lot of-
Hiluxes do that and live.
Yeah. I think a lot of the horror stories you hear about Rangers, though, is down to the drivers. Because let's face it, there is a certain sector of the Ranger market, which is your guys who go to the gym a lot. They'll be taking a lot of supplements, in inverted commas.
Well, they're the same
kind
guys
of
that drive the Mustang.
the kind of supplements that
GWMP
render
series.
your PP a little smaller than it should be, perhaps.
Makes you slightly more irritated when driving.
Yes, give you a certain rage.
Yes.
And those guys will have the Rangers with the fake Raptor kit and the 2.2 diesel. But they get driven like they're race cars. And those
And they're
ones,
all chipped.
generally speaking, will have,
always.
or at the very least, they'll have a sticker for a chip.
Oversized tires.
Oversized
I
tires.
hate
wheels.
it when those wheels are sticking out like half a width. Oh, it
Oh
looks
no,
so.
it looks so bad. But anyway,
But those ones
are the
also-
ones that are going to give you the mechanical issues.
But they also, I'm speaking under correction, but I remember when the Wild Track just came out, it was a 3-liter engine.
3.2
3.2, and
V6,
those, I remember the auto boxes didn't really apparently mate very well to those 3.2s due to there's some...
So we had an Everest with
I
that
think it
same
was-
3.2 motor and that same gearbox, and we never had any issues.
I think it comes down to the fact that you need to drive a Ford in general with a certain amount of mechanical sympathy.
Yeah.
And if
you
you
don't need
abuse
for a
it,
Toyota.
like a lot of Toyotas, well, all Toyotas really, you can abuse the crap out of it and it'll be fine.
But I mean, you don't need to be extra careful now.
You don't have
You
to
just
be
don't
extra
have
careful.
to be a dickhead.
Just don't drive it like a dick.
You
And
read the
you'll be
Ford
fine.
badge, like, van ons ry donderdag, dalk ry ons vrydag.
That's a new favorite.
Yeah. Look, I love a Ford. I've always loved Fords. I've had Fords, and I grew up in Fords. You know, back in the sort of really back in the day, the 60s and 70s, it was, Northern Ireland had Catholics and Protestants fighting, South Africa had Ford guys and Chev guys fighting. And it was the same kind of ferocity in that battle. You know, guns were drawn.
My grandfather was a Chev guy.
And we were Ford people. And
so we wouldn't have been friends.
We would not have been friends. And if we were friends, we were frenemies. You know, because when we go on a road trip, we'd invite you along so that we could show you our Ford was better. Not because we like your company, because obviously we wouldn't. You're Chev people. And we would take you on the road trip just so that we could show you our Ford was better. And even if it wasn't better, we'd still tell you it was better. We'd find some way that the Ford was better just so we could tell you about it. But
the loyalty was strong.
Yeah, the loyalty was very strong. Today, I think there's still a certain element of brand loyalty in South Africa that is a big thing. Brand loyalty, to a certain extent, in Europe and more first world countries, I think has faded quite a lot.
I don't think there is any, very little.
There's still a small element of it. Otherwise, I don't see why people would have bought like mid-2000s Toyotas, because they weren't that great.
They were fine.
I'm just winding you up.
They were fine. They weren't great. None of them are great, but they're fine.
But yeah, I think brand loyalty as a concept has kind of faded away a lot. Except for South Africa, where brand loyalty is still a very big thing on certain brands.
Yeah.
I think the brand loyalty towards Ford has disappeared, for example. You had these guys who were massive Ford people or massive Chev people. The Chev people are still kind of there. They just don't have the Chevs.
Toyota people.
They don't have the Chevs anymore.
So they can't have a Chev anymore.
They can't have a Chev anymore. And the Toyota people are still there. The VW people are still there. But the Ford people have disappeared. They've completely...
There's not that many around. There are still a few, but yeah, they're definitely not part of the population.
But I think also they're not catered to. Yeah, they're not catered to anymore. But yeah.
You don't see a lot of Nissan, and you get some. But you don't see a lot of like Nissan, not just Nissan, but Nissan, Mazda. Like Toyota, you see a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Mazda, Nissan, you don't see that many people who are like die hard.
The fanboys are gone.
Drive one, yeah. There's a few of them, but it's 1 year. But
there's 1 year, but you know he's wrong. So, well, that sadly is time. And I want to take a second again to thank you guys for listening all the way to the end. We will be back next week, and that will be the last episode of this, well, the last part of this first episode, shall I say. And that's going to be my list of overrated and underrated cars, and I'm pretty sure there are going to be some people who disagree with my choices, so make sure you stick around for that one. After that, we're going to be moving on to different topics, and obviously, if you've got suggestions, please let us have them. You can contact us through Facebook. We are facebook.com/Carbs and Coffee. Or you can get us on Instagram as Carbs and Coffee HQ. And you can obviously email me directly. It's Mr. Q, MRQ, at carbsandcoffee.co.za. A huge thanks again to Master Panel Beaters for sponsoring this entire series of Induction Noise, and thank you guys for listening. I'm still overwhelmed. Seriously, it's yeah, crazy. But have a great weekend. Drive safe. Keep it on the black stuff, and we will see you next week.